Good morning, sunshines. So today we're talking about the first phase of your rehearsal. You had your first rehearsal, you've gone through, everybody's getting measurement, all the costume shops working, the scene shops diligently building their set. You're going to have had typically a read through that first rehearsal. If you haven't had a read through the first rehearsal, I personally would have a read through very early on, just so everybody's up to speed with what's going on. There are some directors, and again, you may find the read through is a waste of a 3-hour period or whatever. So that's up to you as to whether the value of the read through is worthwhile or not. Again, depending upon the amount of rehearsal time that you have, you may find that what we're going to talk about today may be something that you don't spend a whole lot of time concentrating on, because you don't have but a week-long, 2-week-long, 3-week-long rehearsal period, and there's not enough time to just commit to a week of table work. But I will tell you, if you have the time, if you have more than 4 weeks of rehearsal, there's generally time to sit down with the actors. It may be for a day, it may be individually, it may be as a group, it may be as a group of certain actors in the company. Like for instance, Crimes of the Heart, you might just have the sisters to talk about the history of the family, etc., not necessarily involved Barnett or Doc and things, people that may not be involved in the history of the family. But during the table work, you're going to try to accomplish several things. First of all, let's watch a little video about table work, what it is.
I started working on this in the spring of 2009, and I'd read this book several years prior to that and knew that I wanted to do a stage play based on it. So I contacted T.C. Boyle and introduced myself to him and kind of explained some of my ideas, and then we worked out a rights agreement.
One we might look at is 59 and 59A. That's the entry of the wall.
I think the reason that I jumped at reading this book in 1995 and why I wanted to do a play based on the book then and why I'm doing it now is that I live in a place that used to be part of Mexico, and I have a theater that's 20 minutes from Mexico. I'm picking up on 58 now.
So I love the table work with the actors and the designers and the director. I have a great debt of gratitude to everybody who's offered opinions on this text and made it better.
And the wall's so big, the work lasts for 3 months. 3 months of work and 3 months of pain.
Can we move that to the front passage?
Put it in the beginning.
Having Matt is fantastic because he can shed insight onto each of the characters and the story and what's going on. And he's also very open to listening to our feedback.
We are all part of this conversation. It's not just the one actor in that part and the playwright. We have a big discussion about, how would that affect my character? How does that affect the audience? So he's really interested in making it authentic.
There's a great opportunity for everybody to be involved. It's laying the foundation. It's like digging all the dirt away to put the play in.
It's very much about what is the tortilla curtain? What does it keep us protected from? And who does it keep out and who's it let in?
Despite the fact that we all have certain assumptions about other people, is that what it all comes down to is the fact that we're all humans.
And we're in a binational region. We should do plays that talk about the world we live in.
Given the long history that this theater has with working with Latino playwrights and doing plays of binational significance, I don't think there's a better theater anywhere to do the first professional production of this play.
Short and sweet. Yep, just get the actors together, get the company together, and discuss the individual characters and the relationships in the show. One of the things, again, as a director, you need to have you don't necessarily have to have all the answers. A lot of times table work, you have to realize, is there to help develop the answers. Without the pressure of blocking, without the pressure of tech rehearsal, without the pressure of anything else, you can discuss and develop the choices that you're going to make. Now, again, a lot of the answers, for instance, in Death of the Salesman, the next door neighbor is Charlie. They call him Uncle Charlie. It doesn't explain how he's their uncle. Is it Linda's brother? That would make him an uncle. Do they just call him Uncle Charlie? But for whatever reason, Willie won't take a job from him, whereas he will take money from him. But he seems to have a chip on his shoulder about Charlie and Charlie's son, I think his name is Barnett. They've been next door neighbors forever. So what is about their relationship that won't allow Willie to take a job from Uncle Charlie? That just is something that you need to have come to wrap your head around, right? You make decisions on. It's not in the play. If it was in the play, I'd be sitting there telling you what the answer is. But the actors in the company need to know what the answer is. So for instance, in Crimes of the Heart, it says that the mother hung herself with her cat and made national news. Obviously she was alive when Babe was born, which again, if you do the timeline based upon 1974 being the current year and Babe being 23, means that Babe was born in 51, right? So obviously she was alive in 51, she's dead in 74. When in there did she die? Was it, when did the husband leave, right? You need to sit down and discuss the opportunities so that everyone's on the same page. You shouldn't leave it up to the actors for Lenny to decide that her father left the family in 1962, which is perfectly reasonable time and period for him to left. She would have been 18. Because she was born in 44, if you go, because she's turning 30 today and it's 1974. If Meg only remembers, the only thing she remembers about him is his creepy smile, it suggests that she was younger than 15. I think as a 15-year-old, you would remember more about your dad. So maybe it needs to be earlier than that. Yes? I would say the sequence of events, again, this is my interpretation, this is my answers as a director. I think the father left, and then after the father left, the mother committed suicide, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say what the sequence of events was, when the father left versus when the mother hung herself. Same thing with with Chick. She is their cousin, which means that she is related to them somehow. So for instance, Lenny and Meg and Babe's mother could have had a brother or a sister that was Chick's mother or father. Again, just being a son of the South, if it had been a boy, in other words, if they had had an uncle that made Chick their cousin, I think the ownership of the house would be already determined. If it doesn't matter whether the brother was older or younger, I think if it's a brother, the house goes to the brother in the South at that time period. If it's a sister, and if Chick's mother is the younger sister, then there's a natural assumption that maybe it's the older sister's house, even though the older sister committed suicide and therefore may have lost her claim to the house. Yes? So ultimately, the characters, the people, if they were real people, would know the answers to these questions. And it is better to sit down and do the table work and find out the relationships of the family, how they've developed over time, histories, like for instance, they call Chick the Stick, so which suggests that at some point she was skinny as just a little bitty stick. Again, you've got the actress, whoever you've cast as Chick, may be skinny based upon that, or may have grown and made stick. It's like somebody who used to be called Red. When they were young children, they had red hair, but it has since fallen out, and now they're bald and gray. But they still call him Red because when he was, a teenager, he had red hair. Yes. So again, there are things that become funny over time. So Chick the Stick may be sarcastic now, where it may have been actual at the time period. Yes. But things like that will lead to things like choices of decorations, like for instance, what kind of pictures are on the walls. If there's two sisters, it seems to me in your granddad's house, there's going to be some pictures of them as children, if not the marriages, because of the husband leaving. It may well be that there are pictures of them as young children at an Easter or something like that, dressed up in a picture frame somewhere on the walls, the mantles, that sort of stuff. So again, this type of discussion can lead to choices as far as dressing, that sort of stuff. We talked about the possibility, for instance, just to talk about Lenny's background. She's got a grandfather in the hospital. She's got a sister who has tried to kill her husband. She has a need for Babe is going to be brought over to the house that day. And so she has identified the fact that the sister likes to make lemonade, so she's gone to the store to get lemons. The possibility that her cousin asked her while she was at the store to pick up some pantyhose. She may have other objects like a newspaper, which might be something that you need to discuss. What's on the newspaper. Again, we talked about the bag possibly having piggly wiggly on it just because it's funny and it's Southern. Again, those are the type of things you can explore, but you need to sit down and explain to the actors the choices that you're making so that they can be on the same page that you are. So they know, for instance, what kind of vehicle has Lenny driven to the store and back? I'm gonna say it's just, again, you can make your choices as a director. I'm gonna say it probably was Granddad's pickup, right? A 1950s old style pickup that she looks awkward in, driving around this old man's pickup. But I just don't know that Lenny, she has no job, she has has not been married, and I just don't know that she has enough money in her pocket to have bought a vehicle. So I think she still drives around in Granddad's old pickup. Meg, I think you're in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, and Meg walks through the door. I don't know what you know about Hazelhurst, Mississippi, but I can guarantee you there's not an airport in Hazelhurst. And knowing her financial situation, my guess is she has taken a bus from Los Angeles to somewhere like New Orleans, that then caught a separate bus from New Orleans to somewhere like Jackson, and then got on another bus and went down to Hazelhurst. So she has been traveling by bus for a couple of days, at least, yes? So again, there are things that are not spoken about. There's no right or wrong to that. I'm just making up the scenario. Again, go through the play moment by moment and discuss what the history of, the value of, the purpose of each scene is. Obviously, there are some scenes like Meg and Doc where you get a lot of information about the history, about going down to the hurricane and all the things that went along, and that's how Doc got his limp and how bad it's a limp. All that sort of stuff is barely noticeable. Things like, for instance, the cake that they bring in. If the cake has inscribed on it, "Happy birthday, Lenny, a day late," that's 6 words that they can read. I'm gonna say that's not a round cake. That is a sheet cake that says, "Happy birthday, Lenny, a day late." Yes? And so again, it can lead to discoveries about props. It can lead to discoveries about dressing. It can lead to discoveries about, for instance, we talked about the fact that Lenny might have some, instead of wearing flat shoes all the time, she might have some house shoes that she changes into, which again, the earlier you can make these decisions, the more time the costume designer has to take care of them. The set designer has time to plan for, to make room for. All those sort of things are things that can come out of table work. Obviously, you need to figure out where the climaxes of the play are. We talked about the possibilities of having, it seems to me the loudest that they are in this whole show is when Lenny is chasing Chick around the table. I would tell you also, just based upon my suggestion is that that's probably the only time in the whole play that anybody could climb on top of the dining room table. Now, does it mean she has to? No, but it's different. And it's funny. And if she does a spread eagle while she's doing it, all the better. This is a comedy, right? Find a way to make people laugh, right? And so that is an opportunity that you can identify and explain, and Chick can be a part of, and we're chasing you around. I don't want you to slip and fall, or I do want you to slip and fall, right? Whack her over the head with a broom. We talked about several opportunities for being quiet in the show. When Barnett and Chick are looking at the photos of Willie J and Babe, and she's embarrassed, seems to me to be a very intimate moment. Obviously, when she's up playing saxophone on the staircase, again, I don't know how well she plays saxophone, but it seems to me it shouldn't be awful. Yes? Now, let's say you've cast somebody who can play the clarinet and not the saxophone. I would make the switch. I think it's easy enough to say, oh, well, you brought my clarinet. I don't know if there's anything necessarily about a saxophone, although it is sexier if you can have it. Obviously, if the person can't play music, how hard is it to learn? It may just be that it's a sound cue that she is just miming. But it may be well worth a week of trying to learn to play a little melody on a saxophone. I don't know, I've never played a saxophone. I don't know how hard it is to play. But again, those are the type of things that you can explore during table work to find out the answers to the questions that you may not have had time to ask at the auditions, that sort of thing, yes? So you're gonna go through the play moment by moment, literally moment by moment, definitions. Dramaturges are very handy at this, yes? That's where coming up with terms, definitions of words that may be unfamiliar, pronunciation, going through and again, finding what idioms mean, different, bless your heart, whatever the Southern idiom may be. It may be different from the actual printed word on the text. You want to go through and let them make a presentation even probably. That they could have done at the first rehearsal, or they could make it the table work. Again, I would suggest having meetings with smaller groups of your actors to create what I'm gonna call secrets. People in life have secrets. Obviously, Babe has the secret Willie J. So they're the obvious secrets that come out in the course of the play. But it seems to me there are other secrets, especially in a family, that has a history of dealing with one another. There are things that, for instance, Doc and Meg know some very intimate things about one another. And where people's erogenous zones are, to make it as polite as I can at the moment. So actors, you may need to allow actors to come up with familiarities with one another that just two people wouldn't necessarily have. Again, good actors will be open, but again, there are limits to things. Yes, hopefully I'm making sense. But things like touching, kissing, those type of intimate things that you might want to work on in table work alone from everyone else, that can then lead to progressions as you go further down the road, yes? To make them feel more comfortable with one another, right? Hopefully you haven't cast a sleazebag as Meg or as Doc, and they're professionals and can handle a professional relationship, but come across as lovers or former lovers, that sort of thing. So again, table work can be an invaluable tool. I would encourage it. It should be a discussion that you lead. The dramaturg can certainly assist you in that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're preaching. I think having the actors voice their opinions about their own characters and to help make selections will help make the characters richer, because again, they're going to have different life histories than you have, different approaches. For instance, I never have been a sister, nor will I ever be a sister. And so there are just attitudes about being a sister that I may not be fully aware of, that having cast 3 women as sisters, they may be more informed about. So they may be able to make some choices that I wouldn't have been able to come up with. Objectives. Everybody on stage should be on stage to achieve something. What is each character after when they're on stage? Doc wants to bring some pecans because he has to tell Lenny about her dead horse. Barnett is there because he's been hired as a lawyer to defend Babe in her trial. Doc is there because he's titillated by the possibility of rekindling a relationship with Meg, and his love life may be waning with his wife. He discovers that he doesn't want to, but that's a discovery. Again, you have the objective, why the actor came on stage, why the character's on stage. Characters discover things. They should discover things. Through the course of the play, the character at the end of the play should be different. And I would say that every character in this play is, except for the girls all love each other before the play is happening and at the end of the play. That is one of the through lines of the play, and I think the purpose of the play is to tell you that no matter what comes, what hurricanes happen, the loving sister relationship between the 3 sisters is strong enough to survive. I think that's the point of this play, right? The trials and tribulations that we're going to go through may batter us, may hurt us, may injure us, but ultimately we are strong as a unit. Cool? So again, finding out, this is where you come up with your production concepts. This is where you describe the intent of each scene. where you have actor understanding about what's the objective of all the scenes and all that sort of stuff. Cool? You need to, not everyone plays the same beat. It's like, again, using a symphony as an analogy. If you're all playing the melody, you lose the chance to have the counterpoint, the texture, the depth that an orchestra brings, yes? And so there are times when everybody's on the same page, yes? When people are rallying against a common cause. I'm not saying it never happens, but oftentimes when somebody enters a room, you may have one character who is annoyed by it, another who is responsive to it. Everyone's going to have their own separate reaction to different people as they come and go. Again, the time to change attitudes, to change gesture, to change rhythm is at the break of a beat. Whenever the next beat starts, whether it be a new entrance of a new character, whether it be an introduction of a new idea, here's a cookie, right? You know, would you like a Coke? Let me get you a Coke, whatever. The new beat is, again, it could be very short, or it could be one character might continue that beat for a long time while another character has moved on to another thing. So again, the beats may not be all in sync, let's say, but the characters are all going to have you can only act one thing at a time. But you can have several things going on at once if you have several actors on stage. Again, the more adept you become as a director, the easier it is to understand that you're not directing just one vocal line. You're directing a bass, an alto, a soprano, a tenor line, and they all come together in harmony. Yes, hopefully, before they all grow. You need to make sure I'm going to call this word actionable. What are actionable words and phrases? In other words, sit down means something needs to happen, right? I'm not saying they have to sit down, but they've got to do something that causes more conflict, which would mean stiffening up, yes? But that's an actionable word or somebody turn the light off. Commands. Anytime you have a command, that's an actionable phrase. Somebody needs to respond to that one way, unless you have a really weak character. It may be that you have somebody just saying, please, would you all just shut up? And nobody shuts up. That's a weak character, yes? But if somebody comes in and says, shut up! Sorry, the peak just went through the roof. I would say that most people would be quiet. And if they weren't quiet, they might cause some conflict to arise. And that's an example of how everyone now is playing the same beat, right? So, when you find actionable words or phrases, somebody get some knives and cut the cake is an actionable word or phrase. Doesn't say who, but somebody needs to pay attention to the fact that we need knives and forks to get the plates, to have the cake, yes? So anytime you go through the script, whenever anybody has some sort of actionable word or phrase, somebody needs to respond to that phrase or action. And then the others can go back to playing the beat they were in, but you have to pay attention to the actual word or phrase. Yes? All right. Warm-ups. When you are dealing with actors, they may not realize it, but you are always better if you've had some warm-up. I would, as a director, encourage actors to warm up vocally and physically. Again, physically, table work may not be so much, but especially if you're doing difficult things, rolling around, doing stage combat, that sort of stuff, you're going to turn something, you're going to break something, you're going to have injuries, soft tissue injuries, which are horrible, because it just takes so much time to recover from them. And so spending that extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, to get people to warm up vocally, and doesn't have to be tough. If you just walk around and hum, you're warming your vocal cords. It doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be something that gets your vocal cords used to stretching and gets your diaphragm used to putting air out, yes? So, and it's better to have those happen. If you can trust your actors to do it before you've got to rehearsal, great. again, as a director, I would encourage you to encourage, your actors to warm up. But again, if you need to spend the extra 5 minutes in the rehearsal to do it, then I would say ultimately do it. All right, let's talk about characterizations. Different actors have different ways of developing characterizations, developing their work. Some actors are untrained. That does not mean they don't have ways of working. Some actors will soak up everything you say without question. Some actors are, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I prefer an actor who's going to do their own homework and bring things to the rehearsal process that then I can then edit, yes? But here are some typical standard ways of approaching character work, yes? One is based on the ideas from Constantine Stanislavski. He was a Russian, well, he owned the Moscow Art Theater, but he was an actor. And he developed a psychological approach to character analysis based a lot on Freud and his interpretations of the psychosis. But this idea of the id being primal instincts and the ego being cognitive ability to work, relate to the world, and this idea of superego having some charge of your soul. Eventually, a man named Lee Strasberg, who's an American, went to Moscow and studied under Stanislavski and developed what we call today the method acting approach. The method relies upon finding some moment in your own life that you can easily relate to how this character and what this character is going through, so you can rely on that emotional memory to portray that action on stage as an actor. Again, he goes through the play and you discover lies about yourself or lies about the character. You discover truths about the character, history. You're trying to come up with background information that isn't necessarily defined in the play. But that's, again, a psychological approach based upon Constantine Stanislavski, but really codified by Lee Strasberg. There is a lady named Stella Adler who very much is in support of the Stanislavski approach, but is not a big fan of the emotional memory part, because her point is, for instance, let's say somebody in the show shoots somebody. How many of us have ever shot somebody? Not many, she would argue. And so one of the things that she would try and do is develop acting based on circumstances. Imagine you were in a bank that something was getting robbed. How would you respond? But it's not necessarily based upon past experiences as it is on developing a forward-looking projection of how you feel you would react, or more importantly to Stella Adler, how the character would react. Yes? If you're playing a strong character, would they confront the bank robber? If you're playing a weak character, would you just lay down and shut up? You know, how would you respond? And it is not necessarily based upon an actual experience, though, as opposed to Strasberg and Stanislavski's acting technique. I would call this more organic. It is something that comes out of your fertile imagination. Yes, this is the best way to get to the idea of organic acting. Again, as a director, you can help guide those choices. I wouldn't necessarily confront anyone who has a particular method of working, but I would help to guide their interpretations, yes, to point them in the right ball field. There's also a man named Stanford Meisner who developed another approach to acting, which is, he said that acting is reacting. Famous Meisner technique, and something you might want to try, is just to have actors repeat the exact same sentence back and forth to each other. I had tacos for lunch, I don't know, just something to say, and then have the other actor say, I had tacos for lunch. And each actor would then change the meaning of the line, but also what they were saying, which led to the idea of subtext. It's very much like in The Princess Bride, where the young man says to her, as you wish, and what he's really saying is, I love you. Yes? And so again, it's one of those things where you can change the delivery of the same line to hint at things that are going on beneath the surface. So that's a standard Meisner technique of approaching the method approach. Here's a little bit more about method acting techniques, a little bit about all of those combined.
Hello, welcome to Organic Acting. I'm Chris Conway, and this is Method Acting Techniques. In this video, I'm going to break down method acting because I know it's quite confusing to some people. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the video where I'll break down what is method acting. So when we're talking about method acting, we've really got to mention Constantine Stanislavski, who is kind of the godfather of all this. If you haven't checked out my previous video on Stanislavski, I'll link it below. Be sure to check it out because it gives you more background about him and his system. So Stanislavski was looking for a more direct path to naturalistic emotion and real life organic moments on stage, as it was at the time. After Stanislavski became successful with the Moscow Arts Theatre, a lot of his techniques slowly started to bleed into America. So here you had practitioners and directors like Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler and Sanford Meisner taking elements of his system and making them their own. Now, Stanislavski always said that his system wasn't a cookbook. It wasn't something that you take ingredients from. It should be a complete package. But they took what worked for them and developed them into their own system, really. And this is where method acting becomes a little bit confusing because there are these different practitioners using different elements. The term method becomes a bit muddled. So first off, we've got Lee Strasberg. He really said that the original system and concentrating so much on the text would block an actor from getting to this emotion. He wanted an even more direct route. So he said that an actor should use their own personal life to find these moments, using things like emotion memory. Again, moving away from the character slightly, but using what was at hand for the actor to get to that place. Stella Adler, on the other hand, was a little bit more faithful to Stanislavski, and that she said that a character and the given circumstances should be the thing that an actor should really concentrate on. They are the meat and potatoes of finding real emotion. Sanford Meisner believed that an actor should concentrate on the moment, on their environment, should be responding to the actors around them, and that should be the emphasis. So what does all this mean? What am I getting at here? Basically, method acting is so similar to Stanislavski's method in that actors are trying to find something real. They're not pretending. They're trying to experience. That's the similarity to Stanislavski. The difference is that method is kind of pulled apart the system. But what you need to remember is that method acting was really applied when it came to film acting. Film being very different to stage acting. In film acting, you are looking to discover a moment instantaneously. So for example, you might be shooting one of the scenes at the end of the script, right at the beginning of the shoot, and you don't have that time as you would in a play to find that emotion, to build up to it. And this is why method acting can help with that. So bearing in mind all these different ways of working within method, so Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner, we have examples of some of the greats using method acting. We've got Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. This is an actor who actually got his cab driver's license and drove around New York picking up fares. He's putting himself in the character's given circumstances, and he's using those given circumstances to experience and to create something that's going to be so real on camera, and it works. We've got other examples such as William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist. This is a director who was rumoured to be using shotgun blasts during a take to create reactions from some of his actors.
That's really what pissed me off. And I told him, I said, never do that again. You know, I'm an actor. I don't need all these artificial stimulants. And he shot his shotgun this close to my head.
Here's another example. In The Godfather, Marlon Brando was rumoured to have taped a piece of paper onto his tongue with a rude message on it. Then, during the reverse, he stuck out his tongue, and the other actor was surprised by this.
Don Corleone, I am honored and grateful that you have invited me to your daughter's wedding. On the day of your daughter's wedding.
A real moment. So there we go, there's some examples from method acting. Method acting is helping these actors to create something real for the audience. There's different ways of working within the method, and perhaps some of them aren't quite as true to Stanislavski, but they work. Method acting helps create something more visceral for the audience. So, we got there. That was method acting in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe.
Yay. Hopefully that helps. There's another approach toward acting, which is just training the actor's physical body, making it as adept and malleable as possible, working on yoga, but also the voice, and giving you a better, bigger projection. It's called the Linklater technique, but it's a series of exercises that you can go through to get the cavity to vibrate with your voice. Articulation is really big with Linklater. Here's a little bit of information about the Linklater approach.
So voice and speech training here is based on Kristin Linklater's work. Kristin Linklater developed a series of exercises that we're going to call the progression, which is an organic series of exercises designed to liberate the body from physical tensions, but it also deals with the psychophysiological tensions that exist in the muscles, in the breathing, and to liberate the voice and the breath, which is the conduit of the voice, so that it can faithfully, truthfully serve the actor's expression.
And again, these are just examples of typical techniques. Another typical acting technique is what's called Suzuki Technique. Obviously it is Japanese based, but Suzuki really points toward the inner emotional rhythm of the character. It's about finding the dominant stance, the power that each individual character may carry, the weight they may carry. It can be helpful to some actors to help, again, find the difference between their character and themselves. So again, here's a little information about the Suzuki Technique.
Oh, splendor of sunburst breaking forth this day, where I lay my hands once more on having my wife. And yet it is not so much as men think, for the woman's sake I came to Troy, but against that next brute treacherous, who like a robber carried the woman from my house.
My name is Stephanie Courtney, and I teach viewpoints and Suzuki work here in Ireland at the Gaiety School. I also teach in California. And I started training with Suzuki 25 years ago, not with Tadashi Suzuki, but in the methodology about 25 years ago. So I've been doing this for 25 years. A movement class involves just the physicality of the actor. We do viewpoints in Suzuki in the movement classes, but we also do some Laban work. And then I also do work in realism where, the actor's body should tell me everything I need to know about the character, time of day, place, all of that. So that's what I pull out of the actor, is I should be able to tell everything without you having to utter a word. I actually have students that I taught 15, 20 years ago that still get in touch with me that say to me, I would not be able to live the life that I'm living now or do what I do now had I not taken a Suzuki class. Because what Suzuki's work does is it puts, the crisis is between your brain and the body overcoming that and actually being able to come into its own strength and endurance, which in a lot of cases is quite limitless. What it really does is that, yes, it strengthens the body and there's all of that kind of stuff, but what it does most efficiently and best is it strengthens the actor's will. It puts the actor in the physical confrontation of, if I give up, I lose. I have to keep fighting, I have to win. And the viewpoints work I've come to realize is really about being very open to external stimulus and being able to play with the external of what's going on, being connected to the room and time and space outside of our thoughts about the room and time and space. The thing about Suzuki actors are Suzuki actors can stand on stage in absolute stillness and completely captivate the audience. They don't have to do anything. And so Suzuki work gets us out of the sort of the tomb or the prison of our minds and what we think about things, and allows our body to find its strength and endurance. And it does, I do push my students, and I do push actors well beyond the point where they think that they're capable of. And when they find out, that they are capable of that, it actually releases a whole new level of capability in a lot of ways. So that's my big pitch for Suzuki.
Again, I'm not saying any one is better than the other. It's just that you're going to have actors you're going to come across who are prefer one way of working and another. Again, as a director, you sort of have to understand where they're coming from in order to create a common language so that you can communicate with one another instead of talking past one another. Yes. Again, there are all kinds of techniques beyond these, but these are the major dominant acting techniques you're going to come across. Improvisation is another very useful tool. Improvisation is where you just are given the basic scenario and you're allowed to create the scene without the demand of having to repeat the dialogue. It allows for things like gesture to develop. It allows for things, pauses, to change the rhythms of things. Because again, once you're just reciting dialogue, a lot of times you forget about the emotional, not knowing what you're about to say, sort of thinking aspect of talking, right? And so again, improvisation can be a way of helping to change rhythms, styles, that sort of thing. There's two basic reasons why actors move from one place to another. One is an external motivation, an external justification. If you have a wad of trash and you throw a trash can, that'll cause you to move to the trash can. One is an internal motivation. I'm moving toward the trash can because I need to just clear my head and think, yes? One is something that you can give a director can talk to an actor and have them clear the space for whatever reason for the picture that you're trying to create. One, you're gonna have to have a prop or a change of the environment somehow in order to get the actor to move. Again, I'm gonna say a good actor can find their own motivation to move around the stage at will. An actor that is not as adept may need to add more justification as a director to get them to move around the stage. Some actors, again, just need that extra bit of character to get them from place to place, and sometimes it works. I'm not saying necessarily a motivated actor's motion is better than a justified motion. I'm just saying it's a different thing for you as a director to understand. Ad-libs, I know people, especially in large group scenes where you may have a crowd that's trying to shout things. Again, early on in rehearsal, I would encourage crowds to be innovative, to come up with different things to saying, but they've got to be in the scene. But eventually I'm going to pare down who's saying what, because again, you don't want it to get too free form. So again, eventually you're going to assign different actors different actual dialogue. But again, ad-libs can be an effective way of getting past part of the play where you're stuck. Dress parades, eventually, again, as a director, one of the things you need to know is whether you find the value in the dress parade or not. A dress parade is going to be a time when you're going to have the actors coming around in costumes without any acting, they're going to be on stage just wearing the costumes, and it's a time for you and the costume designer to look at the costumes in space. There are two things. The reason I mention it now is because if you're going to have a dress parade, it's going to change the date and costumes have to be finished. And so costume designers need to know that they need to be done a week earlier, for instance, so you can have a dress parade. If you find little value in a dress parade, it may be 3 hours of a dress rehearsal or 3 hours of a rehearsal that you can find doing something else. Yes, focusing on something else. So again, if you have, it could change from show to show. If you have a show that is very much dependent upon the colors of the costumes and the set coordinating, it may be worth that moment to do that. You may find a lot of things about the way things look under lights that you would have to wait for a dress rehearsal if you waited without the dress parade. Lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about understudies. Again, I mentioned earlier, use them, but here's a little video showing the life of an understudy.
I play one part in the ensemble every show, and I am the understudy for Glinda. An understudy goes on for a principal role if they can't do it for whatever reason, like they're sick or on vacation or injured. And here at Wicked, it's a little different because Glinda and Elphaba, the two leading ladies, have a standby. So the standby also needs to be out for me to be Glinda. I was out of the show for 9 months having this baby. This is Georgia, and she is 6 months old now. But I was out of the show for 6 months, and I tried to run the show right before I came back in my apartment, just with a recording, sort of thinking about what I did next, and I couldn't remember anything, and I was terrified. And I came back, and I said, I'm not going to remember anything. But then I physically did the show in the rehearsal space and on the stage, and my body remembered what I was supposed to do really quickly. It was kind of amazing. I play a lot of little parts in the ensemble, like a Citizen of Oz and a Shiz University student and a super fancy ballroom guest, the citizen of Munchkinland and things like that. It's not difficult knowing so many little parts. We call it a track, and that's just sort of my part. I sort of look at it as one part, and Glinda as another part. The swing job is, I think, the hardest job on Broadway. They have to know like 7 or 8 different tracks and go on for them all the time. Like, could be a 2-show day, and they play one track in the first show and another track in the second show. And the dancer swings often go on in the middle of a show. They'll be in one track and they have to switch. And I think that takes a special sort of person to be able to switch gears like that and remember all of that information. But 2 parts I can do.
I am a swing and an understudy at Wicked. I guess I'm considered the singer swing. There are, I think, 12 men ensemble in the show, and I cover basically all of them except the real dancers. There's up to 8 guys that I go on for, and then plus my understudy, the Wizard, and Dr. Dillerman. So there's 10 tracks total that I've been on for, or could be on for at any notice. I've always been a bit of a perfectionist my whole life, and I think that sort of lends itself well to being a swing, though it sometimes can be like 18 months between times I go on for a certain track. So that can be a little nerve-wracking, but, you know, that's part of the gig. Me, 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 me. Lulu, Lulu, Lulu. I've been with the show in various forms, always as a swing. Since 2007, I started in the original LA company, and I first came to Broadway in 2008. And so my first 6 months with the show in LA in particular were very stressful. My heart would go into my throat pretty much whenever the phone would ring about an hour before a half hour, because that was usually, oh, you're on for something, and I just didn't have it in my head yet. But now that I've been with the show for a long time and been thrown into lots of situations, it's calmer now. So I have a much stronger sense now of knowing what needs to happen in order to make the show work in whatever slot that I'm in.
I love being a standby. It's kind of the best of both worlds. Sometimes I have the opportunity to watch the show, and then sometimes I have the opportunity to be in the show. My job is to come to the theater and be ready at the drop of a hat to go on for the role of Glinda. Sometimes I'll know if there's a vacation that the Glinda is taking, and I'll know that I have the time, you know, a week of shows, and sometimes I don't know at all. It could be in the middle of the show, which has happened before, or it could not be for 3 weeks. I get asked that question a lot, you know, how often do you get to perform? And there really is no like standard, typical answer. It's different anytime. Last week, I was on as Glinda. It was a blast. It's always fun riding in the bubble. It's the best mode of transportation. I was sitting in this dressing room, it was a few weeks ago. We had just gotten the call for intermission. My cell phone rang and an announcement happened at the same time. You know, Tiffany, please come to the Glinda dressing room immediately. And I ended up being on in the middle of the show. I think she became ill. And that happens, you know, it's real life. I ran downstairs and the wig department had my wig ready, and we were ready for action very quickly. I'd say I think that happened easily in 6 to 7 minutes. Thanks.
It's a little difficult keeping up with Glinda's material because I do it so rarely. We have rehearsal here, but that is one big part of my job, is to maintain that by myself. So I sort of have to take the initiative to make sure I know the lines and the lyrics and the music and the blocking and the choreography, so that when I do need to go on, I'm not a mess. Yes, I have this notebook that has my understudy notes, because Wicked changes a little bit all the time. They love to keep it fresh, and they open new companies, and they are just always changing little tiny things in Wicked. And even though it's been open for 10 years now, it's a totally different show from one day to the next or 1 month to the next. So we'll have understudy rehearsal, and I take notes. And so if I find out I'm going to be Glinda, the first thing I do is open this and see what changed and what kind of notes I got from last week's rehearsal. The notes I get are from any number of people, but mostly the dance captains, the stage manager, or the associate director, any of those people that are the boss of me. To tell you the truth, a lot of it is, we told you this before and you're still not doing it. Or you forgot, or you're not following directions. But a lot of reminders about the character and why she does the things she does, and choices that I make as Glinda. It's cool, though, because I can sort of play around with it. I've been doing it for so long that it's been a fun journey, and it's probably 100% different when I go on for Glinda now than it was when I started. It's usually pretty spread out in between when I go on. I would say like 4 or 5 times a year. I really like to play Glinda. It's fun, but it's also a little stressful because it's a big responsibility. Everybody knows that character is supposed to be funny, so they're waiting to see how funny you are, which is kind of daunting.
Looking at these, I should write more in pencil. Every swing sort of has their own system. I have my little Bible here, which has all my track sheets in it, and so they're marked out per person. They're named at the top. Often they're named by someone who isn't actually still here, because there's been, I'll cover people, there's a lot of turnover over the years, and so I might have somebody that their name is on the track, but they actually were in the show 5 years ago. I just haven't updated it. But we also have changes that happen now and again, where they'll shift things, and so then I have things crossed out, rewritten in my chicken scratch. So, I mean, there's a little bit of constant vigilance, but I've been with the show long enough now that things are pretty securely in my brain.
So the show is going to start in a few minutes, and when the curtain comes up, I'll be in my place for places.
Sometimes not being on stage all the time, of course, can be frustrating, because that's the reason that I'm in this business and chose this career. I love to be on stage. So of course you can get a little bit anxious. But I'm thrilled to be here, and so I completely indulge and, sit into those moments when I actually do have the opportunity to be on stage. I first toured as Glinda and then came here. As you can hear the show playing right now, I come to the theater. I have my own dressing room where I kind of sit, have my own space. I can listen to the show, what's going on, and I also will watch the show either from the house or from the stage manager's office. There's a big TV screen there. And it's like regular upkeep. I have weekly voice lessons, and sometimes we rehearse during the show up in our rehearsal room so that we're always ready, myself, the other standby, understudies, swings, so that we're all ready to go on stage at the drop of a hat. Hi.
With your turkey polka dots.
How are you? The main thing that we'll do together is tune in with the show in the office, watch the monitor, because I could be going on in 3 minutes.
It is a case. Yep.
Now let's reflect one another. Love each other. You're perfect. We're perfect.
It's so easy to play opposite Kyle Dean Massey. He is gorgeous.
Either stage management office or in the green room, we have monitors that I can see certain things if I have a question about spacing or traffic patterns of who goes where in a number of something shifted, that kind of thing.
Hey, Leash, you know how that light spans 0 to 8? I didn't realize that until I just saw that. Like, I can use that whole thing.
We have 3 things. We hit 8, center, and 8, and I just wanted to make sure that that was what was happening and that my brain was accurate, which it was, thankfully. We've had a couple of instances where something has happened mid-show and you just kind of, you click into a way of your brain working that it's like, okay, what needs to happen? I need to cover this, you need to cover that. Let's go, and you sort of get instinctual.
Thank you. He's not even going to be here.
Kind of like the sweet spot is like 0 to 6.
Isn't it wonderful? Bob was too shy to ask me at first, but once Linda encouraged him, don't.
Whenever you have moving, all that stuff can be sharper. And sometimes with Christine, it goes gaga. The heads go slightly different.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, to make sure, I think it's more her.
Okay.
To make sure it's really on the downbeat.
Okay. Great, thanks. Okay, no, that's great. You mean I'm not perfect?
No, it is perfect.
Yay!
You need to have a thick skin, I think, in knowing that sometimes you're going to be not totally right and someone's going to tell you that something needs to be different, and that's okay. That's just how things are. As stressed as you get, you have to maintain, or it helps to maintain, a calm exterior, because your emotions can get in the way if you're too freaked out. So those are all important things to look for as far as a skill set and a temperament.
Again, 3 key terms to take out of that. An actor's track during a show. It's what actor is playing what part during each scene. And the word swing. A swing is an understudy that covers a couple of roles, right? And then you're going to have somebody, well, obviously the understudy is just the person that covers the individual role. And then you're going to have people called standbys, especially in large equity companies on Broadway. You're going to literally have actors who just show up to make sure everybody's well. And then once the show has begun and everybody's in place, they're allowed to leave. But that is just a standby. Again, usually you're going to have rehearsals for those people to make sure that they're up to par, but again, just some terms to be familiar with as we go on. Cool. That's it for today. Again, next time we'll talk about blocking more specifically, and we'll see you then.